Hello everyone and welcome back to the October Marathon, where I will be reviewing our final movie. Today we will also have a special guest, the always wonderful After Dark Analysis. I will also be covering an update on the future of this channel at the end of the video if you would like to stay tuned and watch for that. Today we are talking about the famous horror film, The Exorcist, and how its vulgarities led to its popularity. Just a warning, this video is going to be very vulgar and profane, as well as covering a lot of cursing and grotesque scenes The Exorcist is known for. If you're not okay with this type of content, I ask of you please to skip this video. I wanted to put this film at the end of the marathon because it's so well known and it holds a very special place in my heart. This is arguably my first horror movie, and God, it really scared the shit out of me. Some of the jump scares really got me, and the overall theme of the movie really got me as a kid too. For those of you that don't know, The Exorcist was a movie about a young girl named Reagan, who after her parents divorced, found a Ouija board in her basement. Things surely take a horrible turn with Reagan, leading to her mother needing to take her to the doctor.
This is where we start getting into the vulgarity and profanity that surrounds The Exorcist. Reagan's described as having poor performance in math, she has a lack of concentration, she's very hyperactive. So the doctor writes her a prescription for Ritalin. Keep time period in mind, this was 1973. Ritalin was not dispensed nearly as quickly or as often as it is in modern times. When they're back and forth about Reagan's symptoms, though, the doctor points out that Reagan swore. Her mother immediately goes, no, she couldn't have, she doesn't swear. The doctor quotes her and said, she advised me to keep her fingers away from her goddamn cunt. Not to mention several outbursts that were seen, where she was kind of pushing doctors and nurses away, kept saying she didn't want testing, she didn't want it in general. She seemed to get a little bit more combative with the doctor than the nurses, because as anybody that's been to a doctor's appointment knows, you typically see the nurse, and if you see the doctor at all, they come in after the fact. So it's hard to tell if this is a growing frustration or her specifically targeting the doctor. After they go home, her mother throws a party, Reagan comes downstairs, says you're all gonna die up there, and pees on the floor. And this is completely abnormal behavior. She's, again, a preteen, about ready to turn into a teenager. She's well past the developmental point where you would be urinating freely like that. Mom takes her upstairs, does the whole loving mother routine, gives her a bath. Her bed starts shaking when she puts her down, and the mother sees it. She gets on it, she confirms it is shaking. So now she's not believing so much that this is purely in Reagan's head, because how the hell would a mental disorder or something that would be solved with Ritalin cause a bed to shake? They go back to the doctors, and she has to have several nurses and the doctor pinning her down. She keeps saying she doesn't want it in regards to the test, and at one point does call the doctor a fucking bastard. We get a montage of all of the different doctors, tests, theories that this family is going through. Eventually we cut to a scene where they are back home, and Reagan is flopping around on the bed, but it's only her upper half. It seems almost as if her legs and hips are just meshed into the bed, and just her top bit is flopping back and forth, slamming against the bed, slamming forward, slamming against the bed. Eventually, she flops back completely, growls, pops back up, and says, keep away, the sow is mine, and then says, fuck me, repeatedly. Now, sow, if you don't know what that word means, it stands for a female pig. So it was somewhat vulgar for her to refer to herself as that, or have the demon refer to her as that.
At this point, it is almost made known to the audience that Reagan has become possessed after playing with the Ouija board. And to note, this is one of the first times an exorcism has actually been made into a horror movie, and by far the most popular. It eventually led to inspiring the creation of movies such as 1976's Burnt Offerings, 1979's Amityville Horror, and up to some more recent movies such as 2005's The Exorcist of Emily Rose, and 2010's The Last Exorcism.
This is where we get the infamous head spin, where she says, do you know what she did, your cunting daughter? We again keep going back and forth with the mother and the doctors and all of the things they're trying just to get her well. At one point the mother even says, the thing upstairs isn't my daughter. This desperation and fear leads the mother to seek help from the church to get an exorcism. When the first clergy member shows up, Reagan specifically says, "Stick your cock up her ass, you motherfucking worthless cocksucker," and then proclaims that his mother, who has recently passed, sucks cocks in hell. It's established that Reagan had no idea his mother had recently passed. Her mother knew, but there was no reason for her to have known, and they never discussed it in her presence. He is granted permission to perform the exorcism under the condition he brings somebody who is experienced with an exorcism along with him. When both of them start into the exorcism, the profanity and vulgarity gets much, much worse. There are phrases like, "shove it up your ass, you faggot," "fuck you," and again, going after the guy who just lost his mother, "you killed your mother, you left her alone to die, you bastard."
The exorcism was well known at its time for sending many to the hospital, as people were rumored to fall ill after it. People were literally just falling ill in the movie theater while watching it because of how grotesque and vulgar some of the scenes in the movie were depicting. People would faint and vomit commonly in the theater while watching. Many theaters even held their own exorcist barf bags due to the vulgarities the movie had showed. However, this only made the movie even more popular with fans and fans of horror. The movie had people lining up to see it because of the gruesome and vulgar scenes shown. The Exorcist was seen as so raw, as it vividly depicted scenes such as Reagan masturbating with a crucifix, to the infamous pea soup vomit scene. The amount of shock value the movie held was enough to have many people raving it as the scariest horror movie of all time. Maybe it truly was. The Exorcist played on vulgarity and shock much more than almost any movie had done before, and really pushed that R rating. However, is The Exorcist truly and actually just for shock value? Or is there more meaning behind some of the vulgarity and gruesome scenes inside of the movie itself?
So why is The Exorcist so profane? The answer is more complex than the already complex issue of teen angst. First off, keep time period in mind. 1973, films have been around for a while, definitely, and boundaries had been pushed, but nowhere near the level they've been today. So yes, this was very shocking, just for the level of profanity, brutality, the special effects being as effective as they were for the time. Now boil all of that down and put all of that into a 12-year-old girl. An adult being lewd and crude doesn't really raise that many eyebrows. Some people might view it as tasteless or a bad form of entertainment, but there's typically nothing horribly wrong with it. When we take that and switch it into a young woman who's starting to develop sexually and starting to test boundaries, because that's totally an age-appropriate thing, that's when it starts becoming more offensive.
The Exorcist likes to toy with the fact that Reagan is a prepubescent child. The theme of puberty is rampant in this movie, even though that many would like to disagree with this. The movie takes place when Reagan would normally be going through puberty. At the time puberty was seen as something only to talk about in private. Many people saw puberty as something vulgar, gross, unclean, and unholy. The Exorcist takes this and spins it with the demon possession to make it feel even more filthy and unclean. A mother with her first child, Reagan, is going through puberty, and she doesn't know how to deal with this kind of thing, and she's terrified. Let's not forget the time period of this movie. It was a very different time, and of course puberty was seen as something scary and not to be spoken about very commonly. Puberty could be a very natural process. However, for females, it could be terrifying as bodies change and mutate into unfamiliar forms that cannot be controlled. Many exorcism movies use young women as their targets. This can be seen in The Exorcist with Reagan. A demonic spirit enters her body without her consent and begins to change her. Upon having this spirit enter her, Reagan becomes vulgar with her language, masturbates with a crucifix, and her childhood is gone. Reagan is thrown into womanhood without warning or consent, much like women are when it comes to puberty.
This is why, and spoiler warning for the ending again if you haven't seen this somehow, once Reagan is exorcised and they get the demon out of her, she goes from shrieking and growling and cursing and her skin splitting open and to sitting on the floor in a fetal position sobbing for her mother. It was her getting her innocence back. It was them kind of turning back the clock and letting Reagan be Reagan again. Unpossessed and prepubescent. The help me appearing on her stomach as if it's being pushed through her skin from the inside of her. Biologically speaking, we know things shouldn't do that. We shouldn't just have things appearing and pushing out of us. The problem with that is if you look at somebody who is pregnant, it depends on the baby and it depends on the person, but it's not uncommon to see like handprints, footprints, once they're far enough along and the baby's starting to become active in the womb. Again, symbolizing this change from prepubescence to going through puberty. She is now technically of childbearing age when she starts to menstruate. Not saying she should run off and have a kid, but I am saying she has the ability now to have a child, which adds a lot to the chaos and confusion of that age for both men and women, as women can now bear children. Men are starting to notice women in different ways. The obvious result of these things is obvious, which definitely highlights the whole you're still a child, but you're an adult at the same time too. You're becoming an adult, you're starting to take on the physical characteristics of an adult, but you're still living at home and expected to obey your parents. It's a very awkward time of people trying to find and figure themselves out. Hence why we see a lot of boundary pushing, which a lot of times takes the form of raucous behavior and profanity, which again, Reagan is displaying in a very, very exaggerated way. But if you look at it from a different biological perspective and something that is not supernatural, her behavior fits in line perfectly with this. This is why it's obvious that The Exorcist didn't use vulgarity just for vulgarity's sake. They used it to underscore a bigger, deeper point, not only our relationships with our own bodies, but our relationships with our families and our relationships with spirituality.
So the vulgarity seen in The Exorcist may be there to shock you, yes, but plot twists do have meaning. When it comes to shedding light on larger topics that take place in the real world, it speaks of puberty, development, and even mental illness. At the time, mental illness was also seen as strange, taboo, unhealthy, unholy, and a lot of people with mental illness at the time were locked up, hidden from society, some even killed and experimented on. Many even saw this as a demonic possession when someone had a mental illness. And even today, some mental illness is still a scary topic for many to cover. Reagan is immediately deemed mentally ill in the earlier parts of the film, such as when she was first given Ritalin by a doctor.
Exorcists didn't even want to do the exorcism. They didn't believe in it. When the idea was first brought forward, it was even referred to as Catholicism's dirty little secret, is no one wants to admit exorcists exist or that demonic possessions were a possibility, and all of it wanted to now be written off as mental illness. Mental illness at the time, in at least 73, was still kind of a new feeling things out. Hell, there's mental illness now we don't even understand, and we've been working with them for decades. And this is mostly because before we understood how the brain worked and before we understood mental illness, we just assumed those people were crazy or possessed by the devil, and we took care of that, typically by killing them or isolating them from society so they couldn't be around others and potentially hurt others. While this growth was obviously a good thing, trying to separate everything from spirituality and put it into, oh, it's all mental illness, is also a bad road to take. Because not only is growth and development happening with Reagan, it's happening with society. We have this thing, we understand it now, at least better than we used to. By writing off what was going on with Reagan as a mental illness and completely divorcing the idea of spirituality in any kind of context from the situation, was the pendulum swinging a little too far the other way. Before we relied completely on faith, this was showing an example that was relying, at least for the majority of the film, completely on science. Considering one of the exorcists was a psychologist, it's trying to show a marriage between the two and a balance between the two. Of saying not everything has to be taken on faith, but not everything can be taken on science either. And showing there is a balance between the two. There was looking at Reagan for her mental stability and trying to fix her mental health. When that failed, they did go a spiritual route, but always tried to keep her physical and mental well-being in mind as much as they could. There's even a part where Reagan's heart starts messing up during the exorcism, The one exorcist is encouraged to give her something to help fix it, but the concern is she physically could die.
The Exorcist merges these themes of mental illness and religion together, which are two topics we see fighting in our everyday lives. For a time, they focused on Reagan's mental illness and her health. However, in the film, they took a turn to support her in a more religious and spiritual manner. Even when they saw religion as the answer, Reagan's mental health and stability was still kept in mind and referred to.
So yeah, The Exorcist, all about puberty and testing boundaries and society trying to find a marriage between faith and science. I'd like to thank BadBones for inviting me on to talk about The Exorcist and profanity, which is one of my favorite topics ever.
Thank you so much, After Dark Analysis, for coming to my channel and helping me shed some light on the deeper story and themes of The Exorcist. If you haven't already subscribed to her, I highly advise you check her out. She has tons of videos covering almost anything horror you'd want to learn or hear about. She's also an amazing person and is very well spoken. Talk more about The Exorcist and some of its less vulgar themes. The Exorcist also seemed to master character development, as its characters weren't stupid tropes we see in today's movies. Both characters, Father Karras and Father Lancaster, knew their shit, and inevitably were what saved everyone's asses in the end. There truly is more behind the movie than just a girl with a spinning head and vomit everywhere, and that is how intricate the characters were. Sadly, where The Exorcist excelled in characters and vulgarity, it truly lacks in a category that many of us hate today, and that would be jump scares. After rewatching the movie, many times I didn't realize that there weren't enough jump scares. There were some scenes, but there weren't enough. The one scene with the devil Pazuzu's face that flashed on the screen was the first jump scare I'd ever experienced, and I truly wish that there were more. That was until my mother showed me the director's cut, which is clearly much scarier, and it scared the shit out of me. Pazuzu's face did flash on the screen multiple more occasions than the director's cut, for what many people thought was to scare the viewers. However, a lot of the frames went too fast for viewers to even perceive or be scared of. So many people count The Exorcist as one of the first movies to use subliminal messaging. I was so enthusiastic about this movie that I even went to visit the house that it was actually shot at. The family that was living there had a lemonade stand, and we talked to them for a while before taking photos of the house. And of course, right next to it is the infamous staircase. The movie doesn't lie. That staircase is absolutely terrifying. It's the scariest set of stairs that I've ever seen, and it's the perfect choice for that movie. And in the dark especially, it's just really scary. So, of course, is The Exorcist truly one of the best horror movies to come out of the 70s? And does it deserve the amount of rage that it was made about it being the greatest horror movie of all time? What do you guys think? Is The Exorcist really the greatest horror movie ever? Leave me your thoughts below. And for those of you that care to stick around, I just wanted to quickly talk about the future of my channel here on YouTube. I have a lot planned. On my phone, I have this large list of things that I still want to cover and videos that I want to make, and it's a lot. Some of this is like a series in which I draw creepypastas while narrating them out loud. I also wanted to touch upon some witchcraft, not like fictional witchcraft, but like modern day witchcraft, which is kind of what my channel started out as in my earlier videos, and I kind of wanted to go back to that just a little bit. There's just tons of videos planned, and I really hope to get them out there, and I'm going to keep on working and looking to find things that you guys want to watch, and I'm going to continue posting that. And I'll probably make a American Horror Story video once this season ends, because that is what you guys like watching, is my American Horror Story videos for the most part. So, as always, I'm excited to continue working for you guys, and thank you so much for sticking around, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching.